What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, finishing my deep dive into Styx's studio albums. This is the post-Tommy Shaw classic era. Tommy Shaw would return, but not before leaving. 5 albums, not going to do the covers albums, though the covers album has inspired a new series I'm going to do, in which I try to find the best covers album, but that's for later. But yeah, 5 albums. I'm just going to do them from 5 to 1, and then I will rank those among all the other ones I've done, the Kuralewski era, the Tommy Shaw era. Yeah, surprised musically. I was kind of surprised at a couple of these. Pretty, I don't know if ambitious though is the word, but kind of sounded like classic Styx, kind of pushing the envelope in a different way. I think when Tommy Shaw returns, I think Tommy Shaw's sort of songwriting ambition is always to be admired. But yeah, not a fan of the new vocalists. So yeah, anyways, yeah, I'm just rambling on. 5 albums. Let's get on to number 5. My number 5 is their first album after Tommy Shaw left. This is Edge of the Century, came out in 1990. Glenn Burtnick is the one that replaced Tommy Shaw on guitar and vocals. JY only has one song, and when he shows up it's the second to last song on the album, and when JY shows up, you're like, all right, party's starting, and then the album ends shortly after that. Sonically, the way it sounds, just bad 90s. Like, it's almost unlistenable. It sounds like bland, generic corporate rock. It does not sound like Styx. This is an album that Styx made that just doesn't sound like Styx. I don't think the new singer is particularly interesting. It sounds like overproduced 80s. It's sterile. It's just bland. I just don't think it sounds very good. But a lot of ballads, a lot of Dennis DeYoung ballads that I don't think are very good. Like the big hit, I think, was Show Me the Way, which is just like, wow, if this is the highlight on this album, I just don't think it's very strong. One of the songs, what is it, World Tonight? Carrie Underwood could have sang this song, or not Carrie Underwood, maybe Toby Keith, maybe what's the girl from The Voice? Any sort of country rocker. It sounds like a country rock song. It's and not in a good way. Yeah. And almost feels like it should be. Is it Not Dead Yet? That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Almost feels like it should be like the end of an album throwaway song, not buried in the middle of an album. Yeah, a couple musical moments that are interesting, but then the vocals arrive and I kind of check out. But the one song that I really think is by far the best and most interesting is JY's Homewrecker. It just feels warmer. It feels better. It feels different. It feels like a Styx JY rocker. It's not the greatest song in the world, but it's the best song on this album. But yeah, easily, I think the worst of this era, if not their entire discography. My number 5 for 90s and beyond, Edge of the Century. I guess, right? 10% of it still left to go. All right, on to number 4. Number 4 is 2003's Cyclorama. This one has, still no Dennis DeYoung. Tommy Shaw is back. We have Glenn Burtnick is still here, but then Lawrence Gowan, who I would stick around after this. I think Burtnick would leave after this. Panazzo is here on bass for one. Unfortunately, John, the drummer, I think has already passed away. So we have Todd Sucherman on drums. This one also, it sounds much better than the one I just talked about. It's still kind of generic. Some pretty decent guitar playing and solos. I think the craft of the band is here. I think they're at least trying things that are interesting. I just don't think it always necessarily succeeds. JY, once again, I think is the winner of this album. He's got a couple songs. These Are the Times. This almost crystal ball-y type intro, acoustic guitar, and then JY comes in. This was the one song where at this point in the album, it starts off with this very nice acoustic intro. Reminds me of Crystal Ball. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what we need here. We need like just a pure Tommy Shaw, old school, like acoustic ballad. It doesn't turn into that. It gets bigger. JY sings. We get like a nice build. We get this long, proggy, cool middle. it evolves into the best song on the album. Not exactly what I was expecting when it started, but it's almost 7 minutes long. James Young just delivering the goods. He has a song called Captain America, not the best title in the world. Nice JY hard rocker towards the end of the album that works. So 2 for 2 on the JY front. Other than that, a lot of generic rock, a lot of things that just sound like any sort of produced band in this era. Musically, there are some interesting moments, but the vocals just don't do it for me. Um, yeah, there's just some Elton John vibes on here on some of the Gowan songs, like a piano, like Elton John type 70s ballad type stuff. Um, there's a song Together with which is almost flirting with a Taylor Swift type pop in it. That sort of almost middle of the road. I don't know if country pop necessarily, but like a singer songwriter type pop vibe. Um, we get a random fooling yourself tease that just it's like an a cappella verse with some weird percussion. No idea why that's there. Um, then an opening song towards the end that Shaw wrote, One with Everything, has kind of a cool guitar riff to start it off. Probably should have been earlier in the album, should not have waited towards the end. Kind of a nice little jam, a cool keyboard enhanced middle section. Yeah, it's a song that I wrote single stretched into a double. Like it's basically a really good song that they somehow make it even better by like stretching it out a little bit. And then it ends with this really weird, just janky Dasu Ka, this drums electronic, no weird vibe to end. JY saves it. Shaw's got a couple bright moments. You can see the ambition, you can see the craft. I just don't think it necessarily pays off. Yeah, it's kind of generic overall. But that would be my number 4, Cyclorama. My number 3 is 2017's The Mission. This is their, I guess, 16th studio album. Budnick is gone. Is that his name? Sorry if I mispronounced it. Or Gowan is still here. He's pretty much taken over. Shaw, JY. Chuck plays bass on one song. Sucherman on drums. Ricky Phillips on bass. This is a much better album than the previous two. The craftsmanship is here. I think it sounds way more like Styx. There are some keyboard moments where we're getting to that Disney Main Street Electrical Parade sound. Maybe that's to harken back to the 70s sound, but it sounds like Styx. Not a big fan of Gowan's voice. Sometimes he's like he's going to a DeYoung vibe. Sometimes he's not. He's just doesn't connect with me. A handful of really good songs on here. 100 Million Miles from Home. Kind of a pop prog light, nice rock groove, kind of an okay song. Song called Locomotive, which has a nice like starts off with like some synth and then you get a nice acoustic vibe. Then we get a drop into like a full song. Just sounds really good. Got some good energy. Red Storm. This one has like some atmospheric where we get some like CB radio calls and then some fast acoustic, like a nice proggy acoustic vibe. Some hit and miss synth sounds, but sometimes they work. It's kind of a long, it's like there's a lot going on in this song and like the end result, it feels like it maybe should be a little more impactful or it should have a little more of an impact. I think this is a concept album and this feels like a pretty integral song in the story. It's like towards the beginning of the last third. It's still a good song and it still kind of stands out from the rest of the stuff, but it just feels like there maybe should be something a little more here. And then we get some interesting songs towards the end. Cheesy at times. I think we only get one JY song, Trouble at the Big Show, which is just too short. It's 2.5 minutes long. But yeah, it's hit and miss. The songwriting's okay. I don't really know if it is a concept album. Seems like there's a concept album going on, but I honestly didn't pay attention enough. It wasn't compelling enough for me to dive into. But I think it sounds much better than Cyclorama or Edge of the Century. It's definitely, I don't know. I'm not going to say a return to form, but they're heading in the right direction here. But yeah, that would be my number 3, The Mission. Number 2 is their most recent 2021's Crash of the Crown. Um, yeah, this was a pretty surprisingly strong listen. Musically, I think it's pretty interesting and keeps things fresh from song to song. Not always a big fan of the vocals or the songs themselves, like the middle. There's a lot of proggy passages. There's some psych pop that seeps in here. There's some Beatles influence that seems to seep in here. Gowan seems to be bringing that Beatles vibe, I'm assuming, since it's a lot more predominant on his albums. Yeah, it's just musically a lot more interesting than I think the stuff that has preceded it in this decade, other than the one that's going to be number 1. The opening song, The Fight of Our Lives, is a very Queen vibe, like an over-the-top pomp rock, that kind of Queen energy that I think really works, a really big vocal sound like Queen has. The second track, A Monster, has some really nice prog keys, and it goes into some really cool funk pop. It has this cool Beatles-esque, almost Beach Boys breakdown in it. Little bit all over the place, kind of ambitious, not all of it ambitious, not all of it works, but like they're trying things. I think it's like, might not hit, every time, but I think they're trying some plays. It's like a new coach in basketball who has all these crazy plays, and they're fun to watch. They don't always score, but at least they're trying new things. The title track is pretty good. JY, mid-tempo rocker. I don't think he wrote it, but I think he's the lead singer on this. Then it goes into this really weird, almost like funky, weird psych pop section. A lot of good like psych pop energy in here. That's pretty fantastic. What else? Long Live the King is a nice tight pop rock groove. To Those, a nice little cheesy, very 70s pop rock song. To Those, is this the one? Yeah. Would have fit perfectly on The Grand Illusion or Pieces of Eight. It's got that kind of like big pomp rock, bombastic sound. Like this album sounds like Styx at times. And then the last song, Stream, which is just kind of weird, a 2-part song that opens up with this really interesting guitar groove, and then it doesn't really go anywhere for a while, and then we get this really interesting switch into this nice slide guitar jam that closes out the album. Yeah, it's like 15 songs, but 43 minutes. You get a couple of like short little weird interludes in there. The opening, The Fight of Our Lives, is like less than 2 minutes long. I was surprised. This was an actually pretty enjoyable album. And I doesn't always work, but there's enough, like, there's pop. Tommy Shaw is bringing the pop elements. I'm assuming Gowan's bringing like the psyche elements. The prog stuff still there, light, but it's prog. JY is bringing the rock. Like the blend of personalities is working in the same way it worked in the 70s. Interesting to see if they have another album. This was three and a half years ago at this point. I think it got pretty good reviews. So I think the fan base is behind them at this point. And I would like to see them take this vibe and maybe even push it a little bit further. Not longer. Don't give us a double album. Just give us another 45 minutes of really well, tightly written stuff. This was a surprisingly enjoyable listen. I wasn't expecting this. But that's my number 2, their most recent Crash of the Crown. And my number 1, post-90s, is Brave New World. Tommy Shaw is back. Dennis DeYoung is here. John Panazzo unfortunately passed away several years earlier. This is the last album Chuck Panazzo would play on. On drums, we have Todd Zuckerman. Yeah, it's a pretty good album. The energy's back. They're feeling good. There's still a corporate radio sheen to it. Like, it doesn't sound live. It doesn't sound like this is a band that's jamming out in the studio playing great songs. It sounds like they went into the studio and compiled this album. But the songwriting's good. The energy's good. There's a lot of... It seems like every song they're trying to go for maybe a slightly different musical vibe in an interesting way. So it keeps things interesting. It's a 60-minute album. And when I first listened to it, I was like, nah, man, I hate when bands like, let's do a longer album because we can do a longer album. Then you listen to this album and at like the 45-minute mark, the last song Heavy Water. Heavy Water ends. You're like, all right, that's pretty good. Some good guitar energy on here. It's got like kind of heavy acoustic bouncy JY vibe. I don't think JY wrote it. Yeah, he co-wrote it. He's lead singer with Shaw. It's got a good old school, not maybe old school Styx, but it's a weird, intriguing, kind of fun song. And you're like, that would be a good way to end the album. But we got 4 more songs, 15 more minutes. The last 4 songs are horrible. Like just almost made me remove this from number 1, but because I can just stop after Heavy Water and the rest of this stuff I think is strong enough. High Crimes and Misdemeanors, hip hopcracy. Not really sure what they're going for on here. Has this like pseudo reggae beat with these big overproduced drums, like hip hop beats. I don't know what they are. Some good melodies buried within this horrible production idea. I'm not really sure what the song's about. Just Fell In, this like 50s retro rock vibe that sounds like it should be a hidden track. Don't know what it's doing here. Goodbye Roseland, a Broadway Dennis DeYoung ballad. Like, don't know why. It sounds like it's from a Broadway show. And then a reprise of Brave New World that's not as good as the title track, which is the second song on the album. Everything else on this album, I think, is really interesting. Like, it opens up a little too hard. They're coming out of the box swinging. Like, I Will Be Your Witness. It's like the hitter was said, hey, man, swing at every pitch, man. Just go for it. Opens up with like a serious classical type intro with some serious like classical sounds. Super funky wah guitar drops in there. Really bright, high energy song. Immediately the energy and the effort and the songwriting and just the vibe is better than the one that preceded this, Edge of the World. But it's like you're trying too hard. Like, let's just make this like the third song. Let's not come in like this hard. But it's a good catchy intro. Brave New World, really kind of low-key, playful, has this almost Eastern electronic vibe. Kind of reminds me a little bit of just Make It Through This Night. Just Get Through This Night off Kilroy Was Here. Kind of musically connects with that, it seems, in a weird kind of low-keyed way. We then get a Dennis DeYoung ballad, While There's Still Time. Then we get a song called Number One, which is just... It has these big, overproduced, sterile beats, but it overcomes that over the course of the song. Kind of reminds me of Ween at times. There's these screaming guitars. There's these big drums that obviously just don't sound real. Doesn't sound like a Styx song, but it really works. It's really interesting. Best New Face, the drum sound again is killing us, but at least Shaw's trying new things. So I think the Shaw songwriting like energy keeps everything interesting from song to song. What Have They Done to You has some really serious 90s rock vibes as a JY song. Fallen Angel, a Dennis ballad that kind of sounds like Billy Joel at first, but then it gets faster, has a nice little bounce to it. Turns out to be a pretty good little song. Actually, some pretty good energy there. Everything Is Cool, has some nice atmospheric, kind of ominous intro. Doesn't sound like everything's going to be cool. Nice build up. Get a reference to the title track, Brave New World. I don't know if this is a concept album. Some nice, hard, heavy guitar at the end. Great Expectations, another really cool song. Kind of has a sleek, like almost pseudo reggae vibe, but this time they kind of pulls it off. Some slinky, low-key guitar that actually works. And then that Heavy Water song should have closed out the album. Get rid of those last 4 songs. They almost feel like, hey, we got a bunch of hidden tracks, but let's just throw them on the end of the album. Like, they just don't seem like they belong with the rest of the album. But I do think the first 10 songs are so good and such an interesting listen and have enough to attract that this is my favorite from this era. I don't know why. It really connecting with it, other than those last 4 tracks. But yeah, that would be my number 1, Brave New World. That's what they look like in typewritten form right there. I do think those top 3 albums are all much better than those bottom 2. Surprisingly good. Now, I don't know what I was expecting from late period Styx, but not stuff they're still trying. It's pretty interesting stuff. Something about the production, though, that is a little too clean and sterile and lacks edge, but whatever. And the complete rankings of all of them, not including the cover album, is that right there. Brave New World manages to pass The Serpent is Rising. I'm still going to punish Serpent is Rising for that plexiglass toilet song. And then Cornerstone is still towards the bottom. I think Crash of the Crown and The Mission were just more ambitious than Cornerstone. Cornerstone has some great sort of instrumental jams on it, but I gotta drop that down there. It's just kind of just too much frustration on Cornerstone. But yeah, that's how I would rank these based on this most recent listening through experience. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Styx. Dedicate these videos to my friend Scott, firefighter who passed away just under 20 years ago. Huge Styx fan his entire life. If I was making this video for him, I would be a lot meaner in my comments, but I'm trying to be positive. There was some good stuff on here. But anyways, yeah, give him a hard time about Styx. First Love. Yeah, it's still. All right. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do those things. And if you haven't checked out the more recent Styx stuff, it's not as bad. It's pretty interesting. I was pretty intrigued by it. All right. That's all I got. Peace. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.